No.
Ready to go?
Okay. All right, we're ready. I suppose I will call to order the November 29th meeting of the Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Committee. And we have here how many members? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Amazing. So we do have a quorum. Annie Corman let us know she's going to have to duck out partway through the meeting and then come back. But luckily, it is unlikely we'll have to vote on anything other than minutes. And actually, why don't we just do the minutes right now? So I guess technically that's a change to agenda, bumping that up. Can I have a mover for the minutes? Rachel moves, Lisa seconds. Any discussion? Right, okay. Any discussion, edits, notes on the minutes? If no, then we will take a roll call vote to approve. Rachel? Yes. Lisa?
Yes.
And I'm going in the order I see you all. Nick?
Yes.
Jennifer?
Yes.
Kate?
Yes.
Annie?
Yes.
Ken?
Yes.
And Nicholas?
Yes.
And I'm a yes. That's unanimous. Thank you. Can we also do, as we still have people who are new, a go round of introductions? Maybe we'll once you've introduced yourself, pass to the next person. Can say some combo of name, pronouns, where you're coming from, and something about why you joined WDIC or what you're hoping to get out of it. It could be one word if you want. Priming our brains for discussing the goals. Rachel, do you want to start?
Sure. Rachel Graham, pronouns she, her, an employee at the county clerk's office. I joined WDIC when they were looking for new members in, I think, 2019. And I didn't know WDIC existed until I was working on the 2018 climate survey implementation. And that was when I found that out and saw that they were looking for new membership. And I'll pass it to Kate.
Yes, good afternoon. Kate Chinks Booth, she, her, Director of Youth Services for the county. I joined WDIC 2 or 3 years ago. It kind of all blurs. Annie Corman actually asked me to be a part of it, and I thought it was a great opportunity to just be a part of some really important work that was important then, and I think it's only gotten more important as we've moved forward. So it's for visibility for people who are like me, and just making sure that I was participating in a way that was meaningful. So I will pass it to Dr. Clark.
I am Ken Clark, he, him. I'm director of the Office of Human Rights. I was invited early in my time with the county to attend the WDIC meeting and found that it corresponded with the work of this office as well as work that I had done in higher education at 2 different institutions for 2.5 decades. So that's why I'm here. I'll pass it on to Jen.
Hi, everybody. Jen Micah, she, her. I work at Cornell. I'm a member of IAAA, the Asian American Association, and that is how I got involved with WDIC last year. I will pass it along to Charlene.
Hi, Jen. Thank you. Charlene Holmes, Chief Equity and Diversity Officer here at Tompkins County. Super new to this space and happy to be here. I'll pass it off to Nick.
Hi, I'm Nick Bennett, he, him. I work at Ithaca College. Recently, I was an employee of the county, and I care a lot of, I have a lot of passions for the various work that we do in WDIC, a lot of DEI-J work. I try to bring into my life, working in academia and very specifically like teaching. It can be hard to find, other communities and connect with like our local community as a whole outside of the college, outside of campus. So I really appreciate being part of this group, and also as a local native Ithacan, Tompkins Countyan, it means a lot to be here. So I will pass it to Annie because she said she had to leave.
Hi, everybody. This is Annie Corman, County Legislator, and I been participating in this committee since I started on the legislature 6 years ago now. And I think it's important work because what we do we do for every employee and also more importantly, everybody in the community. So to me, this is really important work. Thanks. I'll pass it on to, let's see, who didn't go? Did Nicholas go?
Not yet.
Hi,
Okay, I'll pass.
thank you. My name is Nicholas. Pronouns he, him. I wanted to join this space because I've been in Ithaca for about 7 years. And I just want to give back to the community in any way. And I'm also Latino and an immigrant, so I love diversity. And I'm currently serving as a public health fellow at the Tompkins County Health Department. And I'm sorry, and I'll pass it to Taylor if she didn't go.
You want to introduce yourself?
I can.
You're part of it.
I'm not on camera, but I'm Taylor Spencer. I'm a deputy clerk for the legislature. And I'm she, her pronouns. And
Why you came to WDIC, but it could be
Yes.
just someone told you to.
I am a staff member for WBIC, so that's why I'm here for you folks. And I'll pass it on to Leslyn because she just got on.
Hello, everyone. Hello. Glad that I could get on. I'm Leslyn, and I don't know what else we're doing. I juggle. What else? I work magic. What are we doing?
We're doing where you're coming from and what brought you to WDIC, although for you it might be different.
Okay. I am currently the executive director of the Greater Ithaca Activity Center, known commonly to most folks as GIAC, described as a large social justice multicultural community center here in the city of Ithaca. It's what we do. And I spent 20 plus years in the legislature, missing it, but happy I'm not there. And founding, whatever you want to call me, legislator of the Workforce Diversity and Inclusion Committee. That's me.
Thank
I'm
you.
supposed to
And
pass
yes,
it. Everybody's done.
Leslyn did not come to WDIC. Leslyn offered WDIC. I'm sure it was a collaborative effort to us. Yeah. And pass it, although you may not know who's not gone, but I see Robert is the last person on the screen, I think.
Hi there.
Loosely. Go ahead, Robert.
So, hi there. I'm Rob Brown. Pronouns he, she. I'm a finance manager with Cornell Cooperative Extension of Tompkins County. I've been on WDIC since 2017, I think. As a human rights agitator, I lobbied this committee frequently enough that Leslin said, how about you apply to be a member instead of just showing up and taking privilege of the floor away from the public? So that's what I did. I love you, Leslin, in an appropriate collegial way.
Lisa, I want to go?
Oh, sure. Hi, everybody, I'm Lisa Holmes. I'm come today by way of county administration, and I've been on, she, her pronouns. I've been on WDIC since 2006, I want to say. And yeah, I've just always found this work really important from various perspectives in the county's staff, department heads, community members, and now county administration.
And I'm Veronica Pillard, they, them pronouns. I am a county legislator since the beginning of last year, 2022, and joined WDIC shortly thereafter. And oh, a printer stopped, it's so quiet. And I came to WDIC or asked to come to WDIC because I think that diversity and inclusion work is critical from a humanity perspective. And I think I like paying attention to and supportive the like squishy human belonging aspects of an organization that might be kind of inscrutable or hard to see. I mean, I'm sure I still only see a little bit of it, which is part of why we keep doing the work. Thank you all. Are there any changes to the agenda? Great. Chair's report. I don't have an actual chair's report. I guess I do want to comment on the introductions are not a thing that happens at regular committees. I see it happen at advisory boards sometimes. I like them because I personally like being in spaces where we get to go around and introduce or check in at the middle. And part of the focus of the committee is like, at least, not all of us work for the county, but for those who do, it's about that we're showing up as our full selves, or that everyone's got multifaceted aspects that are not necessarily going to be what the organizational structure assumes. And we want to tap into that a little bit, not just our official roles. That said, if people hate doing introductions or want it to be different or whatnot, I'm very open to feedback. That's not a topic for today, but you can find me, call me, message me, whatnot. What?
January meeting date?
Oh, yes. Our next meeting, the calendar hadn't gone beyond 2024, but we will meet in January on Wednesday, the 24th, the 24th at 3 p.m. So following, still a fourth Wednesday, still at 3 p.m. And then meetings beyond that will be determined later once the other legislative committees also potentially shuffle. All right, we approved the minutes. On to reports and updates. Update on the Strength and Diversity Award nominations. I guess I can start that. Nominations have closed. We received 6. We are still working on assembling the selection team for that. Leslin will be on it. I heard but didn't fully confirm that someone from the Latino Civic Association will be on it. So I don't want to name them publicly if they are changing their mind. And I know a couple others, people were, at least had mentioned some intention to reach out to others. Does anyone have leads there? Because we have not filled the team spots.
Are we looking for specific individuals who speak to WDIC, or just individuals that we think might be good in the space in terms of picking who the Diversity and Inclusion Award goes to? I think I need a little more clarity around that.
Yeah, so this would be individuals to be on the selection team, which will be like 5 people who will choose, like certainly this year, but ideally like every year, who will receive the award. And we had discussed wanting the selection team to be comprised of people like representing a fairly broad like spread of groups and communities.
Is there a deadline for when the process will begin to pick? Like, what is our deadline for the individuals that we could reach out to?
As soon as possible. It should have been today and I dropped some balls. So on that note, Jennifer, would you or anyone else from IAAA, do you think want to be on the selection team?
Yeah, I'm happy to do it, but I'm happy to also ask other people if you'd like. I guess it depends upon the schedule and the timing. Do you have an idea of the time commitment?
It would require reviewing the nominations and is up to the team, but most likely just one meeting to discuss and choose.
Okay, I'll get back to you.
Yeah, I'll follow up with you after the meeting. Thank you.
Sounds good. Yeah, thanks.
And Rachel or Charlene, because we talked about this recently, are there any other status updates?
Just that I have reached out to Specialty Trophy and Awards in Dryden. I was hoping to just stop out there, but they have closed their showroom since COVID. So they now are taking appointments only but they're only taking appointments. And they only listen to the messages on their answering machine on Fridays. So I left a message and there's also an email, and I've sent an email. So I'm waiting to hear back from them about getting both a running plaque and a plaque to give the recipient.
Can you remind me, is that where you got the first plaque?
Yes.
That Leslin has?
Yes.
And then a running plaque would be like, I guess you can see it in the video feed, 2 examples on the wall of, I think, poet laureate and clerks of the pre-legislature.
Forgive me, was I supposed to report on something? Because you asked if I had any updates about the Diversity Award, and I don't.
No,
Okay.
You weren't in particular supposed to.
I was like,
But-
whew, all right.
Yeah. But this is a great transition, if no one else has anything else on this topic, into a general report from you, Charlene, as the Chief Equity and Diversity Officer, if you, for you to share anything you want to share.
No problem. Thank you so much. Everyone, I'm going to give a few updates about what's happening on the equity and diversity side. One, I'm in the process of a listening tour, which is a part of my environmental scan that involves both qualitative and quantitative components. It's really a way for me to just see what's happening in the organization, perhaps identify some gaps and or spaces where we can enhance practices. So that's been my first 90 days. I've also launched the Equity Exchange newsletter. It went out on November 1st, and it'll go out on the 1st of every month. It was built to celebrate cultural months, but to also build institutional capacity through access to resources such as books, movies, TVs, academic articles, and a recommended read. So that goes out on the first of every month. And I'm hoping to get that to be something that people are looking forward to and engaging in the newsletter in ways that'll start to enhance their own lens. JEDI, which is Justice, Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion, which is our core organizational equity team, has been resurrected from a year now. And we are currently in the process of reflecting on JEDI's role in the past years and where it would like to be in 2024. In addition, JEDI will be updating its values and its goals. And we are embarking on a common read together for lens development. And that read is Me and White Supremacy. That book is going to help us develop our lens where we are all looking at DEI from the same perspective, but also it's was recommended so that we at this point can look at data collection, aggregation, analysis, and dissemination through that DEI practitioner lens. And this, the beginning of this journey is that we start with this book that is foundational in nature. The goal of JEDI as well has been expressed, one of the goals and initiatives of JEDI that has been expressed in our last couple of meetings is JEDI's desire to create systems that help enhance the embedding of practices across the organization. So JEDI being that pillar within the organization where departments and employees can look to for different tools and tricks of the trade to ensure that they're always on top of their DEI work within their scopes of work. And then lastly, me as the CETO, I've been brainstorming and developing a proposal for an adoption of a countywide framework, which will be a roadmap for us to use in the achievement of equity goals and benchmarking and the measurement of success from those initiatives and goals that we create. The framework is called Equity Mindedness that I'm proposing. It has 5 dimensions. The dimensions, if you think about it, they're like, have you ever gone bowling and they put the barriers up? You never go in the gutter. So the framework helps for us to operate within the dimensions, have autonomy and flexibility, and really think about how we can champion JEDI, champion WDIC, and all of the constituents across the organization, as well as at the legislative level and beyond, to embed these practices and just think about this work like it's everyday work instead of it being that separate thing in that separate office in that separate place. So I'm really seeking to enhance practices versus saying what's right or wrong. It's really about us getting to the next level in the dimensions of DEI and ensuring that as a county, we are modeling that behavior wherever we go. So that is an update from me. I'm open to any questions or any feedback.
Thank you so much. Questions or responses for Charlene?
Just wondering, Charlene, not to go into detail, but can you share some of the high-level information that you're finding from so far from your listening tour, like what people are interested in, or where, some of those items that you've seen so far?
Absolutely. Give me 1 second because I believe I have this open on my desktop because I want to make sure that I'm giving the right thing. So right now, some of the reoccurring themes that I am seeing are that individuals, I'm meeting, just to give some context, and thank you, Lisa, forgive me for stuttering. Just to give some context, my listening tour has been with deputies and directors of each department. So it's very leadership focused, leadership heavy. And leaders are expressing that they're seeking to enhance their hiring practices in terms of enhancing their workforce, having more individuals that represent the clients that they serve and more individuals who have intersections of identities. But they're finding that there are some barriers to that. One of those barriers being the civil service exam, and who's taking the exam, and the fact that they don't necessarily look for the candidate comes to them. So they don't have autonomy over that. Another thing is having conversations. Is it, the comfort level of conversations around diversity, equity, and inclusion? Another thing that I'm seeing is equitable pay structures. People having the ability to advance within the organization, instead of sitting in one position for long periods of time without any promotional advancement. That's something that's more prudent, more long-term, but people are certainly thinking about that. And one last thing that was a reoccurring theme as well is the connection, that there's this breakdown in the connection of how important DEI is related to different types of departments. Sometimes they don't recognize how DEI is a part of the work that they do. So being really clear as leadership to convey the importance, they're looking for that help. And I said lastly, but I'll add this one, which has been a reoccurring theme that we've been talking about, is our job descriptions being more friendly to recruiting individuals with intersections of identity. So the organizations like Primes and people are looking for more information, more access, because they would like to move in that direction. Did I miss anything, Lisa? I don't have my paper in front of me, so forgive me.
No, I think you covered quite a bit.
Okay.
Thank you. And a lot gives us a lot of information and direction to move in.
Oh, and one more thing just to share, the training, right? The ability to have access to trainings and more access to resources around related to diversity, equity, and inclusion, so people can engage in continuous learning. That is also something that leaders have been hungry for, and I thought that was amazing.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that sounds pretty exciting, that like a good chunk of what you're finding is interest and motivation to diversify our workforce and make it more equitable, but not necessarily the skills or resources to do so. But you have a lot of skills and knowledge and such, so I'm very excited for where this goes. And I guess I had a question somewhat related, and maybe more about the equity mindedness framework. Will you let us know how we, this committee, can help you like roll that out, get buy-in, whatever it is that you find would be appropriate?
Yes, I've been brainstorming about where. So as I see it, right, if I'm being transparent, when I look at the systemic approach from my vantage point, I'm always thinking about the intersect of WDIC and its influence over, systems and structures within the organization, but also its influence at the legislative level. And then I'm also thinking about that intersection with JEDI, and how JEDI is like, it could be like a sandwich approach on how we can start, or what type of buy-in we would be able to get around adopting a countywide framework. So I haven't ironed out all of the details, but as I'm seeing it, there are like some high-level themes that I think we can intersect with, where the communication between those two entities, you all as a committee and JEDI as that internal source, the intersection is going to be super important, and the communication there is going to be super important in terms of getting buy-in at the legislative level and getting people to, want to be a part of a space where they can operate within dimensions. They understand what that means. It's more about like that thought partnership versus here is a problem, we need a solution. It's more like, let's talk about some of these pain points and let's find different solutions to those pain points that would work for you, your department, your work. So you all as a committee championing what that looks like in the workplace, championing what that looks like for individuals and collective department heads would be my first point of how I would see support and buy-in. And then the next piece would be expressing the importance of adopting that countywide framework and the juxtapose of other municipalities across the nation and how they've been able to enhance their practices with that strategy.
Awesome, thank you. Other questions, comments, feedback for Charlene? I had one more thing about the Equity Exchange newsletter. I was just looking back at it and noticed that in addition to everything that she listed, there's also email signatures that you can go find and put in your email signature for various like cultural and otherwise
whatever's happening
yeah.
that day, that month. Yes. Big, huge shout out to Norma. She helped create that. And so it's super easy. You can click on it, download it, and then add the link to it. So anytime it's in your signature, people can just click on it and learn about the day. So yeah, shout out to Norma for that. She's super amazing. I'm very, very thankful that she helped us get that because people have been using it and it's nice to see.
That's so good. All right, let us carry on to the discussion items. First, the topic of a land acknowledgement. I know Rachel and Charlene and I discussed this some too, and the update, no event has been planned yet. The main update is that we are moving intentionally with this at the speed of trust in trying to reach out to Indigenous partners and bring people together. We talked about the Equity Exchange newsletter as one place that we could advertise that we're looking for people to come together for a roundtable type of thing. I don't think I said this last time. No. A couple of weeks ago was at an event at the Southworth Library about the Truro Wampum Treaty, in which in the Q&A, some discussion of land acknowledgements generally came up, and the opinions expressed by both Indigenous and non-Indigenous people were that they were performative and unhelpful. Various opinions were expressed, and I don't think that means we shouldn't do this. I think that means we can be broader in what we're looking for like genuinely honoring and building a relationship with Indigenous people here, and the Indigenous heritage of this land, beyond just we would like to write a land acknowledgement in words, but part of the exploration can be what is it that we should do? And I don't have the answer. This committee probably doesn't have the answer. That's part of what is going on. Rachel, anything I should have added?
Don't think so. I mean, these are questions I think that'll be brought at the roundtable once we're able to put that together.
So I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I remember, I don't know, several months ago, might be, even if it was this committee, it might have been that I brought up. Y'all, I could be making stuff up, so excuse me if I am. Ceremonial give back of land. Does that ring a bell with anyone? Then I wasn't talking to y'all, see?
Well, I have a
Something-
memory of you telling me this maybe in a Zoom call like 2 years ago, but that was not.
Okay, then I was talking to you. I was talking to, but I don't know if it's in the same vein that you were thinking about land acknowledgement here, because I think there's still a good, possibility of doing something like that. And I don't remember if I even ever sent you the resolution of what the town of Ithaca had done with Tudelo Park. And if the county has land, so the county can potentially do something similar, which would be more significant to me in terms of land acknowledgement. So if I didn't send that to you, I will send it to you, and it might be something that you look at and see if it's worth considering.
That'd be great. Thank you. Nick?
Yeah, I ended up attending an event sort of similar to what you're talking about, Veronica. It was a Gaiokono sort of research / like update of the state of things, a Native American heritage event that was a partnership with Cornell and IC and the History Center. And I learned a lot about the street sign renaming for Gaiokono or Cayuga Street, right? And that might be an interesting, I mean, I'm not saying that WDIC necessarily needs to take that same action, but in terms of giving land back or like ceremonially, but there's what I was gathering from that discussion and presentation and the research on it is, in a way, that inclusion of the native language of the land that we are on, especially with not necessarily renaming or reclaiming. Those streets are like legally, officially Cayuga Street, right? But the inclusion of the colonized name and the native name is an area of representation, an area of awareness, education, and that those are all things, particularly the language and the land, that have been removed from our Indigenous peoples. And so thinking about it, and I like that I think Leslyn was talking about like a park, right? So I don't know how much WDIC could do in terms of actually giving back or ceremonially giving back, but including the Native history as an education and awareness and representation standpoint might be an interesting place to start or consider down the line.
Thank you. Leslyn?
Thank you, Nick. So the Historic Commission, the county's Historic Commission, I sit on that board. The project of the renaming of streets or dual naming of streets, except for the MLK dual naming, that was a city project, with language of the Gaiokono, is a project that we've taken on. And so the Cayuga Street is the first. And just today I was commenting that I don't like how small the sign is. The name is that we need to fix that. They did it when I wasn't looking, Nick. They did it when I wasn't looking. But we are going to be lighting a fire under the city so that will continue with more naming. The other thing that we did is there are some historic plaques that have been placed outside significant places like the City Hall and other places throughout the county that acknowledges the history, the real history of the destruction of properties and the taking in some other places, the stealing of properties from our indigenous peoples. And those plaques do speak to that. If you read some of them, we were very deliberate in making sure that we acknowledge that history. They are blue and white plaques. There's one I know outside City Hall and then various other places. So there's work being done in that way. What WDIC can do just in terms of, you know, the ceremonious give back of land or anything in that nature, land acknowledgement, is we can't do it, but we certainly can recommend to the legislature something that can be done. Although this committee doesn't have the power to do that, this committee is there to advise and support the work of the legislature move in that direction. So I hope they will do something. And Veronica, I'm looking for that resolution that the town of Ithaca passed. I do have it, and I'll make sure I send it to you. And I'll copy you on it as well, Lisa.
Thank you, Alyssa.
Yeah, thank you. Other thoughts? One concrete question I had for any of you is that I think a lot of the work of figuring out how to invite and inviting and like organizing we're calling it a roundtable, I guess, event is that is work that needs to be done probably outside of this committee space with a smaller group of people. Would anyone like to be part of that? I see Nick and Charlene. And Kate. Awesome. Thank you. I will follow up with you about that. All right, anything else on this topic? Moving right along to reviewing the 2023 goals. So I think the goals, same document you saw before, were in the what do we call it? The meeting agenda, the agenda packet. Thank you. And so I guess, you know, what I'd like to do now that this is our last meeting of 2023 is check in with each of them and come to just a general agreement on like, did we address this at all? Like, did we address this fully or not at all, or something in between? What barriers did we encounter with that? And do we want to hold on to this goal or refine it some way going forward into 2024? We don't need to be setting 2024 goals in this meeting, I don't think. But if there's things here that y'all think, oh, we didn't do it, but I would really like this committee to address it next year, we may as well flag that now. So just going down the list, in the membership section, review and update bylaws, we did that. Recruit new members to fill vacancies and expand representation, we did that. Hooray. Any comments, disagreements, whatnot on those? Hooray, yeah, I love to start with a victory. All right, workforce. Human resources continue to support their work and understand processes in place. And we had a couple sub points. Recruitment and retention, support a welcoming and nourishing work environment and help advertise it as such to others in the community. data usage, support the use of existing data to tell stories, always remembering context and purpose. My recollection is that we had a conversation about all these things with Ruby Pulliam, our HR director, toward the beginning of the year and did not really come back to any of it.
That's what I remember too.
Do others recall? Does anyone have thoughts on, is this something we want to return to and such? Nick?
Yeah, I wonder if in terms of recruitment specifically, the topic that Charlene brought up with the oh my gosh, she had a really good name for it and I'm blanking on it. The listening to departments and whatnot. And this was also something when I was chair of the Access and Equity Committee for JEDI. The language of our job descriptions and job postings specifically, I think we could just keep that in the back of our minds for this area of the recruitment in terms of welcoming and nourishing that environment and the advertisement. Just it's come up quite a lot over the last couple of years just from my experience. So I think it's definitely worthwhile to consider.
You. Others? Charlene?
As an update, I know Ruby's not here, but Ruby and I have been in conversations around perhaps putting together a committee that would come up with a comprehensive strategy around how to update our job descriptions to reflect appropriately what we're looking for in the workforce in terms of like a diverse workforce and what the retention piece will look like, right? Because if they go in tandem with each other, we can attract and try to recruit individuals with intersections of identity, but we have to ensure that we're injecting them into a culture that affirms and values their lived experiences. And so we are in the process of brainstorming about putting something together where we can have a more strategic effort towards that. So it'll be like a system that we are able to put in place that all departments would be able to engage in. So as they're developing their job descriptions, they'll be able to utilize some sort of language, a framework, things of that nature. And then, as we build institutional capacity, we're ensuring that we're creating that welcoming environment. So I think WDIC perhaps shouldn't pivot from this because it'll be integral to that process internally.
Well, thank you. I guess I have a question that is maybe for Lisa specifically, and maybe this is a rip-off curtain moment. I obviously, the Human Resources Department, I think more or less controls like recruitment and job descriptions, or I don't know. You are Ruby's boss. This committee is very much not and can't direct them to do anything. How does WDIC interact with the work of HR in a way that's like appropriate and productive? And
I think it in the same vein as how WDIC works with any department. HR seems to be more integral toward these issues around recruitment and retention and so forth. So, the direction that we're trying to go in, the county administrator then has the responsibility of directing direct reports in that manner. That answer your question?
good enough for now.
Okay.
Thanks. Okay. Other thoughts on this, or I guess we've been focusing on the recruitment and retention bullet point, but there was this discussion of data usage. And one thing totally outside of this committee, but that may be relevant that has happened this year is the county now has a policy on publication of data that didn't exist before. Who's got thoughts, hopes, desires, questions on this? I need a word for like all the things one could say. Charlene.
I just have a clarifying question. When you all put this together and you said data usage and the support of using existing data, what exactly were you measuring? Or collecting, excuse me. What kind of data is collected and what's the lens? I guess is what I'm asking.
I think the short answer is that we didn't have that answered. Does anyone else recall and want to share so it's not just my memory?
Well, I know there was a meeting the year before or last year in 2022 where Ruby did share the data that they have in HR for the current workforce, or in 2022, what was current. But there were certain questions about data that isn't collected. But I think the answer was that they can't really collect certain data because it
sounded like a lot of the data that Ruby had or that the HR department had was things that were like collected according to mandates or guidelines from higher powers like federal government and such. Nick, you had your hand up?
Sure, yeah, just that it was, what I recall was, it was the demographic data that we are able to collect, that HR specifically is able to collect, and kind of the discussion point with it was that it's very limited in terms of, like you were saying, Veronica, that it didn't seem to include or cover a whole lot in terms of identities and intersection. Like, for example, there were very limited like race and ethnicities that could be chosen. Gender was the traditional two, disability status, I think like LGBT plus status, like was things that were just not included or kind of the protected statuses.
Robert?
Yeah, I'll just jump in. We were really looking at the standard workforce EEO data, equal employment opportunity, which directly ties into federal regulation classifications established through the Civil Rights Act, filtered through state human rights law. The questions that we can and cannot ask relative to what we want to know about our progress on our welcoming diverse workforce goals, relative, and what's really verboten. There are certain statuses that we simply cannot ask employees, and then there are others where employees can self-disclose. And we have had several starts of conversations about, independent of what we can collect from HR, what might we wish to and what would we be able to do for seeking voluntary disclosure beyond what already exists within our equity and inclusion survey. That's the big answer to your what was the scope, Charlene.
Lisa?
It's all coming back to me now too. The other thing that I recall is that it's this data that Ruby provided isn't available at the push of a button. It's very much it takes a long time to compile, or at least with our previous systems, it did. I don't know that much has changed since then, and there wasn't a clear goal or direction as to, or, you know, was it to assess the status of where we were, or, you know, I don't know that we ever had a discussion about from there, where do we want to be? And what are we using the data for, really, I think was the crux of the discussion. And there was no clear answer in my recollection in terms of goal setting, something like that.
I think that's matching my memory too. And the bit about remembering context and purpose, or the purpose in particular. I remember Ruby saying, like, it's not good to just gather and publish data just because you have it. There needs to be a why are you like publishing, presenting the thing. And I'm sure there's many options, but we hadn't focused on one thing. Leslyn.
So historically, we've been asking for this data, and particularly as Nick explained, the demographic data of our workforce, which included not just, you know, who's working for us, but information on separations and race, ethnicity, ability status, age, any number of things of those employees. Which went hand in hand with what was supposed to be as reports from department heads on their recruitment and retention strategies. So if we notice this in one department, I'm just making this up, all 5 employees of color have left, that raises a red flag. You know, what have we checked out? What's going on? Is there something happening? As Charlene was saying earlier, is the environment not safe, ready, whatever it is for these employees? What work has been done? So it wasn't just collecting data for the sake of collecting data. It went hand in hand with accountability on what we're doing to meet the stipulates of our diversity policy. And part of that also had to do with part of the diversity policy also included evaluations or performance evaluations of our supervisors, department heads and supervisors. I don't know how much of that has been put in place just yet, but that was the reason for some of this. We had this happen with one department, that we had a number of employees leave back to back to back, and you know, our former county administrator, we encourage to look into it and see what's going on. Why are employees, you know, dropping like flies? And, you know, it did reveal some stuff and we had to deal with. So that was the main purpose of sort of getting reports on data on where we are, what are we doing. And it also was just keeping our fingers on the pulse of how are we doing as an organization in terms of recruitment and retention and support, not just that, but support of our employees. So in my recollection, that was the main reason for it. And yes, we were not just asking for the mandated information that you have to supply to the federal government of the protected classes, but we were asking for even more than that.
That's helpful, thank you. You were saying you all were asking for it. Were you also getting it? Okay. Do you have, you know, not this moment, I find it helpful to like see an example of what some of that data looked like, even if it's not filled in with like actual information. But if it was like, yeah, like lists of people who like quit, or I don't know what, I'd like to see what it looked like.
In previous WDIC minutes and so forth, it would be published in
yes
previous years.
So yeah, you can get it there. So we did get a lot of information. And one of our former county administrators will also sort of create graphs so that he can show trends. And that was very helpful.
I guess could someone, or I don't know, maybe Taylor, can you make a note to,
I can show you.
okay, tell me what to search for to get it?
Yep.
Thanks.
Something that Leslin said also just sparked something else, which is not in the goals, but related to the accountability piece. This last year, we updated the policy around employee evaluation and have incorporated that this year. HR incorporated training for supervisors on how to conduct a performance evaluation, and part of the department heads evaluations are specifically.
Sorry, do you mean evaluations of the department heads or the department heads evaluating their employees?
Both.
Okay.
So part of my evaluation of department heads incorporates how they have taken steps to ensure that all of their employees have received a performance evaluation in the last year, because that's something too that's a retention piece and an accountability piece, but that people desire that performance dialogue with their supervisors. And there are many people who work for the county for years and never had one. So that's something in the last year that I know we've taken steps to do together with HR, and including the training on how to do it effectively.
Awesome. Thank you for doing that in that update. Anything else on this topic? Carrying on then, next item on the goals was review results of the compensation study and support the county's response. I don't know that this committee did that, although the compensation study came out and is being responded to and implemented. And I think a lot of that is happening in the context of collective bargaining that is not public. Someone that will correct me if I'm wrong, or if you have things to add.
That's correct, though the results of the compensation study are public, and there was discussion at the legislature level. There were special staff town hall meetings and discussion there, but the actual implementation of the recommendations are happening through collective bargaining.
Any other questions or intentions or comments on this? Next one was collaborate to implement diversity and inclusion awards throughout Tompkins County in conjunction with Team Jedi's Recognition and Appreciation Committee, and explore starting a running plaque with award recipients' names. And in the context of the Leslin Queen Claiborne Strength and Diversity Award, we discussed this just this meeting. Does anyone have things to add?
Yes, yay! That's my addition.
Great. We're carrying on, and I think something that we at least attempted to set up a plan for going forward, not just for this year.
Yeah. My only other contribution is while hypothetically we could do more in the future, I think that this initial run is more than enough right now. And why should we overcomplicate it other than celebrating the applicants and the recipient of this one?
Agreed. Thank you, Rob. Next, find people to host the Tompkins County Workforce Reading and Discussion Program in collaboration with the city of Ithaca and host it once this year. We did not do that. Charlene.
Yeah, are you gonna say the same thing as me, Lisa?
Yeah.
So go ahead, you can report.
You feel free.
Okay, we just had a conversation about, because I had asked about a book reading, a brown bag lunch, some sort of programming to build capacity around different topics related to DEI. And so that is something that is a priority for the CEDO going into 2024. So I'd like to collaborate on that so we can achieve that goal. I think that's a low inertia, low hanging fruit. We can do that fairly easily and get that done. Perhaps plan that before, the end of this year and have some sort of schedule for next year.
Awesome.
If you'd like to collaborate on that, I'll be working on that.
That sounds great. Robert.
I'm just jumping in on this one, combining my hats. Since we're on this subject and we hadn't delved much into it this year, I think that there's a lot of value in us as WDIC supporting internal county specific reads and explorations like this, because there are so many facets that no number of book groups or concept exercises in this community would ever be enough. But as far as book read collaborations, I also like how we might connect with others within our county doing the work. I'd like to flag that I'm also a board member on the Community Foundation of Tompkins County, where we are deeply committed to justice and diversity, and have been doing work on community book reads as well. And so since I have both these hats, I think that there is an opportunity for collaboration there for, while each entity does its own, for us to combine forces in the implementation of shared ones and achieve cross-pollination between our stakeholders.
Awesome. Thank you for bringing that in. Other comments? It sounds like in some form this, a workforce reading and discussion something is definitely, well, in the plan for next year, and Leslie gives a thumbs up. Next, monitor the implementation of recommendations stemming from the 2018 climate survey. I'd love to hear a Team Jedi member respond to this one, if you're willing.
I don't think that happened. I mean,
I'm not on Jedi, but I think that, or at least my understanding of many of the recommendations were followed up on and written up in a report. One of the one that I just mentioned about the performance evaluations was stemmed from the climate survey, and that was one of the last ones to tackle. And there were some steps involved in terms of creating the instrument that was going to be used, like a kind of the universal performance evaluation instrument, and to be sure and updating the policy, and then also making sure that the training was in place for supervisors and department heads to ensure its success. So all of those things happened around that last recommendation.
Thank you. Nick.
Yeah, and I just wanted to give a little credit as well to the Access and Equity Committee. It wasn't just me when I was the chair, it was our whole little committee. We did a couple of reports, one with on the performance evaluations and the other on the specifics recommendations from the climate survey. And so there was active work being done this year on those things. So I just wanted to give credit to those folks.
And including you, thank you. Other comments here? I think this might end up kind of relating to the strategic planning process perhaps a little bit, which we'll get to in a moment. But the next one was support the hiring and onboarding of a new chief equity and diversity officer. And we have her, which is very wonderful. So check to that as well. So in the diversity section, follow information regarding Tompkins County's strategic plan to ensure that DEIJ are central and essential components in the plan. And this bullet point, keep in mind that racism is a public health crisis, among other things. My recollection is that racism is a public health crisis. And that statement was left over from a previous year's goals. I think while important, it's not a goal, it's just a statement. And I'm not sure what, if anything, to do with that here. As for the strategic plan, my recollection is that we haven't done much about it as a committee, but the process has certainly been going, and Lisa's been keeping us updated, as well as I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think we've all had opportunities with our different other hats on to participate in the input gathering in the process.
And and that there have been a very intentional steps taken and conversations had to center equity in the plan, and it comes up. It's a continual conversation to do that. So.
Awesome. Thank you. Any other thoughts here? I think the shape of this will shift once the strategic plan exists and is approved in, when, months from now? I can't remember the timeline.
Yeah. In 2024.
Okay, next, support the planning of the 2023 Juneteenth celebration. Does anyone want to comment on that? I don't know that this committee,
Dr. Clark.
Yeah, but Dr. Clark?
Yes, well, excuse me, well, the several members of the WDIC helped us in the planning and implementation of the county-city collaboration for Juneteenth. And we are in process now planning for next year's event. In fact, we have a meeting on tomorrow. And that was, and those contributions certainly helped and enabled us to have a good event, and also too helped us in terms of sort of augmenting the event in terms of, while for the second straight year we had a Black business fair, but we also had a career fair, both being held at Southside at that time.
Great, thank you. And I had forgotten about all the pieces. What role can or should WDIC play in the 2024 Juneteenth celebration and or planning for it? Open question.
I would say certainly in terms of helping to promote it. I mean, overall, and getting word out through various channels that people may have within their respective work. That would be one thing that comes to mind for me in terms of getting word out on that and because we're planning on this and getting ahead of this now, I think we'll have ample time to be able to get information out.
Rachel?
I just wanted to say that I know at least in 2022, there was money in the WDIC budget for the Juneteenth celebration, which for last year, there wasn't any money from WDIC used for Juneteenth. So Veronica and I had a conversation and Charlene about the budget for 2024. So we'll want to talk about what portion of it we can use toward Juneteenth for 2024, and then just make sure that it gets used in a way that's helpful to make that happen.
So that would be appreciated.
Leslie?
So once again, just because of timing, I might not be able to participate as actively as I'd like in the Juneteenth planning. However, I want to go back to when we first started. This was a collaboration between the City of Ithaca's workforce and the county workforce, intended to provide education and opportunity for mingling and learning for city and county employees. There's already Juneteenth for the community that's done by the Southside Community Center. And so I want to throw my 2 cents in that as you plan, that we please keep in mind that the intention was to make sure that our workforce, our workforces are engaged in a very meaningful way in the learning. I don't know how many of our workforce participated last year in the activities that were planned. I know I couldn't, as a city employee because of timing and when things were happening. Others might have been able to, but I just want to be cautious around that it was intended for our workforces to have that opportunity and not something that's just for the general public at that point, because there's already one for general public. Thanks.
Thank you, Leslyn. Do you have any examples of things either in the planning of Juneteenth activities or the activities themselves? Things that worked particularly well to engage members of either or both workforces?
I think when I think of the initial Juneteenth event, which would have been, I guess, in 2021, I think, we did do a really good job of getting word out to the workforce, certainly from the county end. And I think we need to just, kind of up the ante for that. I mean, we were able to get word out certainly through, information, electronic and other means of communication. I think too, because of the way in which that was structured, which we were inviting people to a picnic. I think that was, definitely a motivator in that regard. But we've had to plan otherwise in different types of ways since then. So I think that we just have to be prioritize getting word out to the workforce early and often.
Okay, thank you. Other thoughts? We'll certainly come. Oh,
I think it's thank you as always, Leslie, for the historical context, and I think there's a lot that we could continue to do for that specific original intent in terms of mingling and awareness building between our workforces, the county, the city workforce, and so forth. I'd also just like to flag as we think about the evolving opportunities in our role in this. As government, we are particularly well poised by mission and position to serve as an agent of encouraging, catalyzing, and uplifting different community efforts in this area. With Juneteenth and also other opportunities to celebrate the strength that we have in diversity. I'll also say that in my relatively brief time in WDIC these past 5-6 years, and we were like my first participation here in this committee discussing it was before Juneteenth was even recognized as the paid holiday day off from work that it should always have been. Right. So we have seen evolution there as well. And it becomes tricky as agents of our staff's employer necessarily to do too much in the way of encouraging people to make decisions of what to do on their well-deserved celebratory day off. So that's always something to think about as well.
Thanks, Rob. Kate.
Yeah, just as a reminder, whenever we're talking about budgets and things for employees, just to make sure that we have that conversation, that we include finance in that, to make sure that the funds can be used in the way we're wanting to use them, so we don't run into issues with that. So just I know there's been a lot with that the last year or so. So
Thank you for flagging that. All right, let us move on to the next item, which was explore diversity training for Tompkins County Advisory Board appointees, employees, and elected officials. Consider how to implement such training and consider what specific issues or problems the training is meant to address. I don't think that we did this at all. I think it's still important, and I suspect that Charlene's listening tour, though, at least for employees and perhaps elected officials, could bring up some issues or problems that might be addressable via trainings. What are your thoughts, Charlene?
Another priority for 2024, we've been having conversations around the new website, the intranet, and the access to resources related to training and capacity building. Right now, the mode for trainings are one-offs, conferences, summits, things of that nature. But we are looking to, I've been discussing with the team about ways for us to have a constant space where people can access training and information related to DEI. Right now, the newsletter was meant to be a mode for us to start the conversation about that. So if people are clicking on the links, they're taking them to websites and resources, and all they have to do is engage. But that would take us into the specific issues and problems, not necessarily being issues and problems, but the mandate of the training, right? Like, in order for you to be in compliance as an employee, you have to go through this training. I think it would move in that direction versus it being us addressing specific issues. It would be more like us messaging what we want from employees from the beginning, kind of like the IT trainings and the compliance trainings. You go through it, sexual harassment training. Now we add the DEI component to that training space.
Thank you. Kate?
yeah, I'm so vaguely remembering this conversation, and I think the idea for this was for the advisory board. So for example, for us, it would be the youth advisory board, the recreation partnership, that they are required to do sexual harassment training each year, sort of like you're saying. But it would be, and though that is just a nice doll video that they watch, right? And then there's an attestation form that they fill out. So the idea was that it could literally be just an already created online video that sort of that the county feels would do a good job of representing our values, and that we would be able to push it out to our advisory boards and have an attestation form that they've watched it to, because people are in different places and different things, but at least it would give us an attestation and a baseline to know that everybody had been exposed to a general consensus of what the county was moving forward. As you serve on these boards, it gives us a shared language and sort of a baseline moving forward as we're starting to do the things you're talking about. If I am wrong, please correct me, but I think that was the idea.
Thank you. Robert?
I'm a huge fan of mandatory trainings, especially mandatory trainings with teeth in human rights areas. But I am leery of putting too much emphasis on them as our primary strategy, because just in order to come up with a curriculum for a mandatory training, one always has to pare a lot down and establish really just a bottom line. You know, like our statutory sexual harassment training, which now by statute is expanding to more forms of identity harassment than just sexual harassment. It's a decent training. And for the state default version, I enjoy watching Roberta Reardon's delivery of it, but it's also way basic. And there are ways that we, as advisory boards and other participants, can go so much deeper in order to establish connections between us, broaden our perspectives, and allow us to really knuckle into the work that I strongly encourage strategic thinking about. Ways that we can have those training spaces that go beyond the minimum we have to establish through mandates into how do we really understand these things? How can we go deeper? How can we elevate ourselves as a collective in how we think about and live our ideals?
Thank you. Charlene?
I think two things could be true at the same time. And yes, we need the capacity building, but we also need a foundational approach that everyone is engaging in that allows us and affords us the opportunity to have that shared language, that shared lens, and everyone's engaging in the work in similar ways. So for example, one of the high level trends that I'm finding in my environmental scan is people are expressing a lack of a coherent approach to DEI. It's very disjointed. And so this piece of a mandatory and or compliance like DEI training would literally be foundational in nature as we start to develop that next level of the approach, which would be a part of the strategic planning goals and priorities. It would be a part of the framework that we adopt. It would be a part of the ways in which the intersection happens at WDIC as well as JEDI. So it's not just the training one and done. People will have to engage in that extra work later, but we do need to lay a foundation. And I am being asked by department heads who deal with external constituents such as volunteers, they have advisory boards, things of that nature. They need something to hold their advisory board and constituents accountable for our values as an organization, and we have not given that to them. So that mandatory piece would be, well, if you want to be a part of this board, you have to go through this implicit bias, microaggression, whatever we decide, right? This foundational lens so that you recognize what our values are. And then from there, we take you through a journey of how we approach our work and we champion you in the space. So I think we should explore that. That is something that is a high priority for me, and I shared with our team about that. Because it's not going to be linear, it has to be multidimensional in nature in order for us to really think about the entire workforce. We have 734 employees. I might be a little bit off. And then we have the advisory boards who oversee them. We have the legislator. We have so many constituents working in these spaces, and we don't have a systemic approach to that. I'll talk all day. So yeah, those are just some of my thoughts that like two things can be true at the same time, and we should explore it as an option.
Right there with you.
Thank you. I'll pipe in. I'm also a fan of the idea of everyone, like employees and advisory board members, having a shared like minimum baseline understanding toward our county values. I also want to note, if we do more, if we add more mandatory online trainings, I wonder if they could be due not at the same time as the others, as the current ones are due tomorrow, very soon. I finished mine. I've been hearing from my colleagues that collectively they are too long. Although, I don't know, I had a good time. Anyhow, moving on relatedly, next goal is continue to support the adoption and uptake of county values throughout the organization. Remember that our values are respect, equity, accountability, and integrity. Oh man, is that right?
Good one.
I hope, okay, thank you.
Yeah.
I almost said inclusion, though, we like that too. So that like diversity related trainings could be a part of that. Something that we did work on this year was the process for nominating a colleague who's exemplifying a value. And then we never actually got that off the ground, but we could have, and I would like to
And it's on the website though, right?
I don't remember. Oh, maybe.
I think it is.
We had the cards, yeah.
Yeah.
That wasn't, I don't know, that wasn't
But we had the
WDIC this year.
form.
Yeah.
I think that went on the website at the same time that the Strength and
Oh.
Diversity Award did.
I think that's true, though. I don't know that it was publicized
Right.
anywhere. But anyway, Nick has his hand up.
Yeah, just additionally, there was some progress on this in terms of getting the values posters put up in more physical locations around the county. I know my department got one delivered and it was put up framed and put up in the OET office. So I mean that wasn't there before. So there has been a little progress with this as well.
Yes, thank you. Good point. By the way, Nicholas said he had to leave the meeting and didn't have a way to say it without interrupting, but sends his regards or regrets that. Anyway, I don't know if we need to mark those things in minutes for this. Other comments on values uptake? We can come back to that in the future, in the next calendar year. Moving on, 4 more. One was begin planning for 2024 workplace climate survey, explore adding more questions and depth to the DEIJ portion, also ensure communication to employees to keep them updated on the delay from 2023 to 2024. And we've talked about this in meetings. This is now a delay to 2025 so that we can finish so we can have the strategic plan in place and then move on to a climate survey. And I don't know if others have clarification or comments there.
Have been mentioning, we mentioned it at the last staff town hall, and we talked about the, where we're at with the strategic plan and employee input process.
Awesome, thank you. Charlene.
Sorry, really quickly. Is JEDI, I know that Access and Equity have the recommendations, but is JEDI a pillar in the implementation or execution of the climate survey? I'm asking for clarity. Or does WDIC solely work on it?
JEDI wasn't a thing until after the last climate survey.
Got it.
It was something that came out of the 2018 climate survey. So they hadn't been, it had always, I think that is it a policy that we do the workplace climate survey? It's part of a policy, isn't it?
Yes, part of the
Diversity policy.
Yep.
So that came out of WDIC, that it be done on a certain regular basis. And I think because Lisa has expressed before that it is a heavy lift for county admin to, do all the things with getting the consultant and putting that together and then doing a push to county employees and then collecting that information and then putting the team together to then review the results and come up with the recommendations. That I think now that we have JEDI, I think that would be a huge help if they were involved in that. My opinion.
Yeah, it sounds like it's something we should explore, especially because you sit intercommittee, right? So that's a nice streamline to utilize that internal core equity team to lift some of that. I think we should explore that.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that it empowers and honors the voices of the people who step forward to serve with JEDI, which is critical to just basic human decency and also workforce engagement.
Nick?
And this is data as well. This is another way to collect data with a slightly different lens that may not feel as may not have the same I'm going to say vibe as like the voluntary / optional like demographics collection that's done kind of with hiring. So it's another great data area.
Awesome, thank you all. Any other things on this topic? All right, the next one was develop a plan to celebrate Heritage Months with specific months / weeks listed on a calendar, present proclamations and other announcements as appropriate, and explore hosting and funding outside speakers in conjunction with the Office of Human Rights. I think we made a calendar, we've been presenting proclamations and announcements. I don't think we explored any, we certainly didn't fund any outside speakers.
But we do now have the equity exchange, which explores all of those and takes people to places to learn more about each of those heritage months. Thank you, Charlene.
Yes. Yeah.
And Norma.
Thank you. Yeah. Other comments, questions, intentions around this? Cool. Second to last one, review gendered language in internal and external county documents, including job postings and advisory board applications, and support departments in replacing with gender neutral language where possible. I don't recall this committee particularly working on that at all, though I've noticed that as some things have been updated, gender neutral language is showing up. And I guess we did that in our own bylaws.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound right? And do people have other comments or desires? Charlene?
As Jedi start to develop their goals for 2024, once again, another priority for them to explore a strategic way for us to message that to the rest of the county, where it's clear of what the expectation is and tools and tricks, tools and resources in order to execute that moving forward. So that is another priority as well. But that'll be coming out of Jedi.
Awesome, thank you. Annie?
Yeah, I was thinking about that. I know some of the, as Veronica mentioned, some of the policies have been coming out, and our government operations committee, I think, has been on that, or maybe some other folks at admin who are writing the policies. I'm just wondering, would we, I don't know if this is part of what Team Jedi would be working on, or if this would be this committee, wondering if we need to codify that in some way, in some policy, that's what we want going forward.
I like the idea. Others? And as often, I don't know what the process for implementing it would be. Nick?
I think this is super similar to the, like, I wonder if we could encompass the gendered language aspect with, like, the language we could use as just inclusive language, right? Because this comes back to, like, the second point that we had, the recruitment and retention language of our documents and advertisements. I wonder if there's a way to combine and make the inclusive language sort of line more prominent in terms of goals, or kind of like combine.
I like that. Charlene, yes.
That's along the lines of my thought process, and what I would recommend is that access to tools in order to do that, right? So it's like people innately know that we're moving in a direction of having inclusive language, gender neutral language, things of that nature, but they don't know how to institute it in their work. So Jedi would take that access to resources and tools piece and create what we feel the county could use as an external communication to everyone on how we do the work. In terms of the policy stuff, I think that would come from you all. But then again, I'm new, so forgive me.
No, that makes sense. Thank you. Anyone else? Last thing on this list was about Audit County accessibility for compliance with the Americans with Disabilities Act and beyond, perhaps with an outside consultant. Couple of bullet points. We discussed this and didn't move very far, and in fact mostly sort of rewound to this was too ambitious and specific, and both that we should start with just assessing, like, what is the state of accessibility, but also that can mean so many things. Do we need to focus and be sure that, like, anyone who might need to be at the table at the end of the day is at the table at the beginning of the day. And that's all I recall. Any other additions, questions, requests? Lisa.
I'll speak to the communications piece in that the digital communications anyway. The county has been subscribing to a software which monitors the web pages for access and provides reports on areas that need correction. But perhaps more importantly, with the move to a new website, which we are going to be doing, it will, I think, greatly improve that, because there are, I can't say how many tens of thousands of pages there are in the county's website, which makes it very challenging to keep accessible or even establish accessibility. So I think the move to a new website will greatly improve that piece.
Thank you. And I'm excited about a new website. Other thoughts? And I think, I mean, if people in 2024 want to see any of this in that year's goals, we can come back to it at that time. Otherwise, that's the end of that. Any stray thoughts about the 2023 goals that someone's holding on to and wants to say? Nick?
Just another little victory. I kind of remember last time when we were reviewing the 2022 goals to make this, that we went overtime and we had to come back at the next meeting to finish it. And so it's just another victory of, yay, we got more efficient.
We also, we went over time and did not approve some minutes. And so our wise clerks have put the minutes earlier in the agenda now. So thank you. So speaking of the agenda, that's almost all. Committee members' reports. Does anybody have any announcements or sharebacks related to the work of WDIC? Great. Anything else before we adjourn?
The WDIC does not meet again until
Until Wednesday, January 24th at 3 p.m.
Okay. Just want to encourage people to mark their calendars. January 13th is the annual GX MLK Dr. Martin Luther King Community Breakfast. A couple of workshops being offered, as well as the usual food and fanfare celebrating and honoring the life of Dr. King. So please mark your calendars. We'd love to see you there.
Thank you. Any other announcements? Ooh, I have one if I could find it in time, but I probably can't. That's okay. We're adjourned. Enjoy your night as I look out the window and don't see any sun. Thank you all.
Thanks, everybody.
All right. Packed a lot in. Yes. It was the Latino Civic Association holiday.